Welcome back, everyone, to episode 103 of The Green Life. I am so excited to be back after a little break. We took a break to just collect our thoughts and really just think, how can we bring more amazing episodes to you? I wanted to really think about how to extend and expand the vision of The Green Life. The Green Life is all about really bringing knowledge, awareness around lifestyle, diet, especially when it comes to plant-based. But I also want to go beyond that. I want to go into spirituality. I want to go into much deeper topics. And today, I have an amazing guest to do that with. It's a returning guest, actually, Dr. Patty Lager. Dr. Patty Lager is also a professor of A&P and was here to talk about the lymphatic system the last time and the difference between a more mainstream medical school approach to A&P and a naturopathic one. And today, we're going to take it even beyond that. We're going to talk about how spirituality is part of health. Dr. Lager has been studying esoteric knowledge and has been working at really understanding what is beyond the body. Now, for somebody that looks at the body as a whole and in a very materialistic way, like really tangible way, going beyond that is fantastic. And I really wanted to ask her what she learned, how she got into it. So she's going to share it all on this episode. Now, before we get into it, I just want to give a big shout out to Namawell as always for the J2 juicer, but also the C2, which actually gives you a blender on top of the juicer. Nama is all about creating availability for you to have more plants. I'm not an affiliate as such, but I do have a great discount code for you that you can check it out in the notes. I do, however, have affiliate accounts to Dr. Morse's Herbs in the US, which gives you 5% on your first purchase. New Zest, which is my protein powder of choice, plus my favorite product from them, which is the Go Green Vitality, which is basically a supplement. It has everything. You can find their 15% discount code using my link and my code if you want to just use it. And also Wonder Workshop, which also gives you 15% on the first purchase. Now, New Zest is the one that continuously gives you the discount no matter how many times you buy your products. So I really encourage you to stock up and enjoy and really give me feedback about how great this product or brand is. I like the taste. I don't find any artificial, taste in it. It's not too strong, and I really love the purity of the ingredients. So I use it personally. I feel really good on them, so I can vouch for them 100%. Now, guys, if you want to learn more about my services and how I work with women, balancing hormones, thriving for health, empowering women, get in touch. I also left my website below, and I can't wait to chat more. Now, without further ado, let's just dive into this episode. It's brilliant. Welcome, Dr. Lager. Hi, Patty. Welcome back on The Green Life. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Middle of summer, really hot, but otherwise. I'm so glad that we made the time. I know you had quite a few crazy months and very challenging as well since last year when we last talked about doing another interview. And so I'm really grateful that you're making the time now, and I'm really happy that you're back online as well with your episodes every Friday, although I never catch them live.
I know, different time zones.
Yeah. So last time we had a really good dive into anatomy, physiology. We really explained well what the lymphatic system looks like, your work, how you work with Dr. Morse. We really dove into a lot of beautiful things. But as that was really focused on the physical, you and I talked about this before, but also like I follow your work and your studies because you're like an eternal student, just like me. And there is that part that we didn't get into last time as much, but it's the spiritual part. And I know you are very much into, diving deeper into more than the physical and going into the esoteric. And I really am fascinated about that because I think, as the title says of this episode, health is also spiritual work. So I would love to talk to you about what you're studying and how you're combining, what you learned of the physical body and how that can connect to the ethereal body that we have as well.
Yes, of course. Yeah. So, any particular place you want to begin? Because it's such a vast topic when you get into spiritual science and how that connects to the human form.
That is true. Let's just start how you got interested into it. I think probably that will be giving people a lot of insight. I mean, last time we talked about how you got into medicine, how you work with Dr. Joel Fuhrman, and this is how you got into the hygienist movement and decided to steer away from traditional, well, not traditional, but from um, modern medicine and going to more into traditional medicine. And so how did you get interested in the spiritual work, actually? How did you find out about all these esoteric teachings, and how did you start diving into them?
Well, when I did start my path towards natural hygiene and naturopathy and looking at a more natural way in which we can help the body live in nature and heal if ill, I came across various, you know, notifications about alternate views of human physiology and human anatomy. And these kept popping up into my awareness. And one name in particular that came up quite a bit, and I think I first heard of him from, oh, why am I drawing a blank? From the one of the big gurus of juicing back in the day, David Wolf. Sorry, his name kind of was lost for a moment. But yeah, from David Wolf, which I was following, I think, 15 years ago, around that time, he kept bringing up Rudolf Steiner. And I'm like, who is this guy? And I would hear his name back and forth. And then more recently, I would say within the past 5 or 6 years, in other studies like homeopathy, his name was coming up again. And I'm like, okay, I need to look at Rudolf Steiner and who this person is and why so many people that I respect are referring to him. And so I slowly began my path towards his immense amount of work. He has so much that he has given to humanity in the name of lectures and books written. Mostly it's his lectures that were transcribed into textbooks. But it's such an amazing amount of work. And then through other people like Mark Passio, I also came back to Rudolf Steiner in respect to theosophy, which Rudolf Steiner was a theosophist. And so just going down this path of what this man brought to humanity and other people that were influenced by him, I think that's kind of what led me into learning more of a deeper spiritual knowing of who we are as human beings, because this physical existence is such a small drop in the bucket of who we are as souls. And I think it just brings more vibrance and more just joy when you can think of the bigger nature of all of this and you don't get so bogged down on the small things. And I do try to tie it into health, because reminding people that I'm working with that illnesses that come about are part of the karma many people have to work through. And there are agreements that were made before this incarnation, and you have to meet certain people. That's your karma. You have to experience certain what we call diseases or physical imbalances. That's your karma. And by working through our karma, we become more conscious and we begin to ascend. And that's part of this spiritual journey. So it all ties in really into spiritual science. So that's kind of what began my path into Rudolf Steiner's work and the study of spiritual science.
I love that. Funny enough, I actually also heard about Steiner from David Wolf about 12 years ago, but also in conjunction to the Waldorf schools, because I realized that there were these schools that were alternative for children to learn in a very, very different way to our traditional educational system. And interestingly enough, I mean, I don't know how it is in the US, if it's even allowed to have these kind of schools, but in Europe, they can be a little bit challenging to access for people because they can be more expensive. And, in a way, it feels a little elitist, because it's like, why do some children have access to this and really learning more about education through experiencing nature, so outside the classrooms, and then bringing it in the classrooms, versus the traditional education where you're sitting on a desk literally for 8 hours, basically training us for being in an office when we grow up. So it's like schools are really prisons for little people, before we get into the prisons for big people. So it's like, it blew my mind. I'm like, they're teaching this? Because obviously I went to a normal school up to when I studied high school, and I went to an IB education, which, yes, is more traditional than the Steiner approach, but we had different, because it was private, it was a little bit more open, more experience, like focused, and not just sitting down and taking in information and basically falling asleep. So I was like, what a big comparison here. But if I don't know if you have looked into the Waldorf schools, because obviously being an educator, I think you may be fascinated by how that is. So for people that don't know about the Waldorf, can you just give me a little introduction?
Well, I wouldn't say that's what I know most of Steiner, but yes, Waldorf schools do exist in the United States. I know a couple of people who have sent their children to those schools. And, coming from Steiner's perspective of education, I don't know how much of his true intention of these schools are still in existence today. Another thing I've learned from Steiner is that he had many concerns of what would happen to anthroposophy and the many branches, like into medicine, education, movement, gardening, there's biodynamic agriculture. I don't know if it's been diluted at all, but I know, one person I know that lives in the same city I do, he mentioned to me that his children went to Waldorf schools. So I know they exist. I don't know exactly what the curriculum is about. Maybe you know more. But yeah, I know that it's definitely considered an alternative type of education. And I think many people are seeking such an education. I know our modern educational system, which I currently work in, I'm a college educator. It's kind of based on what's called the Prussian model. And so this is a model where basically their intention was to create good soldiers, good order followers, not to create free thinking humans that can create, new things in the world. It's just to create a group of humans that are going to follow orders. And when you think about, how schools are run, children learn to listen to a bell that rings that tells them to go to the next class. They're very much, learning how to memorize things. I mean, it's very scary because I even see it, in the students that come to the college I teach at. Many of them just want to know what's going to be on the test. There's no curiosity. And to kind of unfold that curious nature that we all have deep within us. If you look at children, I mean, they're curious by nature. They ask why? And I think if we can, nurture that, that would be a beautiful unfolding. And I think that's what Waldorf schools, I think the intention behind those types of schools, I think that's where it is. But we don't see that in our modern education.
Yeah, I think from what I know about the schools is, as you said, connecting to nature. So I think the children spend the first time parts of the morning in nature, whether it's raining or sunshine. They're outside, they're observing the trees, they're observing animals, and then they go back inside and discuss and dissect the thoughts and the connections. And of course, they learn, the thinking, the logical thinking, the maths, and so on. But they do it in connection to what's outside, which is probably much more true to our nature as humans, because last time we were mentioning, like, even when we look at the body just physically, when we look at the physiognomy, the anatomy, we are so part of nature, and we are so disconnected from it in the way that we are studying any subject really right now. So it's a very fascinating way. I think more parents should look into this. I mean, in Portugal, I've seen a movement of, they're not necessarily Waldorf, because I think now you have to probably pay for the name, but they are alternative schools. So they're based on that kind of model, but they don't call them Waldorf schools. Or Montessori, I think, is another one that is a little bit more alternative as well. So I would like to start with the children though, about spirit, because obviously we are souls more than bodies, or we are souls having a human experience. And we come here, and you say we have this agreement that we make in the spirit world before we incarnate into this physical reality. Can you just, first of all, I know everybody knows what a soul is, but I think if you ask somebody, what do you think a soul is, they might not be able to say it. So, from your understanding, from your studies, I know you're also actually studying the esoteric teachings, what do we define as a soul?
Well, again, I take it from Steiner's perspective because that's just what is resonating with me.
Mm.
When we look at the human being, it has a fourfold nature. We have a physical body, we have an etheric body, we have the astral body, and then what Steiner called the ego, but it's not really how we use the word ego. It's more of like the ontological I am presence. And so, of these four bodies, we share some of them with other beings in our natural environment. So the physical we share with the mineral world and all physical things. And then we move to the etheric. That's shared with plants and animals. And then we move to the astral, which we do share with animals. Plants don't have really an astral body in this realm. And then the fourth level, the I am presence, the ego level, that's truly human. That we do not share with animals. And so humans have a spirit. And so that I am presence is our spiritual nature. The astral level, the one right before that, that is what Steiner describes as the soul. So our astral body is our soul. And animals do have a soul. Steiner does mention that they have kind of a group soul, but animals, because we're all on these hierarchical stages of development. Above us as humans is the angelic realms, and above the angelic realms we have the archangels. So some animals are working their way up, to where we are, and so many, incarnations beyond where we are now, we will be angels helping what the animals will become. And I don't know if we'll be calling them humans at that point, but it's a beautiful transition when we look at that. So I see the soul at the astral level and then the spirit at the I am ego level. And from incarnation to incarnation, when we come back in, it's our astral level that's coming back into physical form. And then an etheric body is added to that, because it's what the etheric body does is it adds energy. It moves the physical form. So some people that have developed skills, and these skills can be developed by all human beings. It just takes a lot of practice, and Steiner does provide guidance on how to develop these skills, but some people can see these various bodies. They can see the etheric, which is kind of just outside of the physical. If you spend time on meditation and certain types of focusing exercises, you can see this energy field just outside the physical form. And then the astral is a little bit beyond that. It's bigger around the head, and then it's kind of like an egg where it's bigger around the head, and then as you go down towards the feet, it kind of narrows a little bit. So that's kind of how I'm learning to understand this. And a lot of this comes from clairvoyant and just knowings from people like Rudolf Steiner, people that have done the spiritual work. And some people have come in with these skills already in this incarnation, so they're naturally able to see these things. You've heard of things like synesthesia, where people confuse sounds with colors. And so when you speak, they'll describe it as a color coming out, or when they hear something, they describe it as something else. So it's a mixture of the sensory input and how that's articulated. It's quite, amazing what humans have the capacity to do.
Beautiful. And so, would you say that what's connected to source, given that there is this hierarchy, is it the I am, or is it, what do we start at the astral?
Well, the I am presence is, it's there always, right? It's kind of what connects us to the source or God or the all. Um, you know, And we take that with us at all times. So there is no death. There's just different variations of what we pass through in our development. So there's something that all humans have within them. That is the I am presence. And only a human can say, I am. And we are in this present moment at all times. The astral level, it's what can take things from each physical incarnation and, take it from one incarnation back into the spirit world after we pass away and then to the next incarnation. There is some cleansing of what we pick up. So, after a person dies, they go into what's called Kamaloka. And that's where the etheric body is passed on. So we don't take that with us, the etheric body. The physical form, obviously, is going to be part of the earth once again. But in Kamaloka, the astral body is somewhat cleansed and restructured, getting ready for the next incarnation. The I am presence is there at all times. It's just, you have your I am wherever you go, whether you're in spirit or in physical form. But yes, the astral body, it does have to go through a lot of karma payback in Kamaloka. And I think that's where this idea of heaven and hell come from, because if you've done a lot of things in this incarnation that maybe were not so virtuous in Kamaloka, you have to face that. Steiner talks about this. So he mentions in one quote that's quite, impressive upon people when you read it, but he mentions the vivisectionists, people that, dissect living animals. No, lidocaine used, nothing to put the pain out of their system. And he says the vivisectionists will have to face the same pain that they inflicted on the animals they were dissecting. And we can even expand upon that. I've expanded upon that. Like, what are we doing to all of the beings on this planet? How are we hurting others? And not just, animals, but other humans, our forests, our, ecosystems. We have to learn how to respect and live in a symbiotic relationship with all of this. And I think that lessens the karma. There are some beautiful sayings from many traditions about not desiring anything. And when you don't desire, you kind of melt into your environment because you don't need anything. You're part of something greater. So yes, in the astral world, or your astral body, I should say, the Kamaloka is where we kind of cleanse everything. And then after Kamaloka, there's Devachan. And that's where you start to kind of reform your new astral body, preparing for the next incarnation. Because you take what you've learned, you've faced your demons, you've learned to, because if you haven't given up your desires in the physical form, you're going to have to do that in Kamaloka. They describe it as, being in the desert and being so incredibly thirsty, but you don't have a physical body or hands to pick up water and drink. That's what Kamaloka is. It's very, I think, the way Steiner describes it, it could feel like hell. Like, I'm so thirsty and I can't drink. And then you just have to eventually say, I give this up. I don't desire the water. You don't really need the water, obviously, but you don't need anything. And once you've given that all up, you go into Devachan and your astral body is restructured, ready for the next incarnation. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that's kind of how Steiner expands upon all of this. And there's a wonderful book called by Steiner called Founding of a Science of Spirit. I may email it to you later if you want to include it in this video, as it's a free, not a free ebook, but you can purchase it, the ebook. I have a Kindle version of it. You can purchase the regular hardback copy, but there is a free audio version of that book if anybody is interested in learning of Steiner. And I think that's a good book to begin with because it really does unfold a lot of Steiner's teachings. And from there, you can move on to other works that he has created that offer more in-depth understandings of all of this.
Yeah, wow. There's a lot to unpack because with this answer that you gave me, it goes back to children, right? So As we come here after having gone through this purging and uplifting and karma cleansing, we are now in a physical body again. And I think children naturally are, these black canvases in this experience that are, I think, are naturally drawn to doing the right things and connecting to nature and not actually hurting anyone. But we have a very negative environment that we live in this society, that kind of shapes us to go against natural law. We talked about this before, and plus this is the name of your social media, your business, and the sense that we are part of the one, and natural law just unfolds naturally. Like, we don't have to force it, we don't have to explain it, we just naturally know, but we are so against it. So I know that you're very aware of, the forces that are in this reality, and I think even in the spirit world, because as you said, there's always an opposite to everything. Like, there's positive and negative, but why are these forces that are in this reality trying to take us away from natural law, from our natural instinct to actually elevate to the next level? Like, even in Kabbalah, if you actually look at the tree of life, we are meant to go upwards. Of course, it's not linear. You can go across. There are many steps to growth, but we are almost always pushed down to Malkut. Like, you're not going to elevate yourself. And Malkut is not a bad place. Of course, you have to be here. You have to be connected to the physical, more dense reality you're in. But the point is that because we're not just physical bodies, we should be going upwards. Why do we live in a society? Why do we live in a world that is trying to keep us just at that one stage?
Well, I think it comes back to karma. We have to have a little bit of chaos to understand chaos and to work our way through it. So, in Kabbalah, that middle path of ascension is the best path to stay on, straight and narrow. When we go off to the side, that's where we become imbalanced. But sometimes we don't understand we're imbalanced until we're over here on one side or over here on the other side. And we can say, oh, I'm really not over that straight and middle path anymore. And so that's a learning experience. Okay, what can I do to come back to center? And for many, that's just an ongoing journey. The way I look at it is, if there was beautiful peace on this planet, which I would love, for us all to live in peace and harmony and respecting the animals, respecting each other, living with nature as opposed to destroying nature, we would be in eternal bliss, but our spirits might not grow. And, I think in some spiritual questions, people ask, why did the God create all of this? Why is there creation? If we have this all-knowing God, why do we need all of these little bits and pieces of God? Because each one of us, every living being, is a piece of the source. And the one thing God does not know is, because God knows everything. He's omnipotent, he's omnipresent. The one thing God does not know is how to be Chantal and how to see the world through your eyes in a more limited perspective, how to see the world through my eyes. I'm more limited. I'm not God, obviously. I am a very limited version of knowing a little speck of the universe and how to deal with that. And this is where God is becoming more knowing, is through knowing all of these limited versions of ourselves. So, a child coming into this world is a new chance for God to gain that knowing, even though he knows everything or she knows everything, it's just expanding the knowing of all, and that perspective of how this human is going to, when taken off balance and when being shown all of the traumatic things that are going on in the world. I mean, there's so much suffering, and it's heartbreaking when you see certain images on the news and reading in papers, and just the torment whether it's people being bombed or factory farms. Sometimes it's just too much, and some people want to hide, but can we face it? Can we become better? Can we look at these things and say, I'm going to make changes that are going to help reduce the suffering? And through that action, we're creating more beauty, we're creating more peace, So it's just what the soul has to go through in order to, again, walk that center path.
And we see the difference between people that are engaging into this knowledge, learning, moving upwards, trying to be better beings overall, holistically. But we also see people that don't really care about doing that. And you talked about how we have to face our karma at some point. But if they, through this karma cleansing or through this facing of the pain, if people don't learn, do they come back and repeat the same mistakes?
I mean, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine, I mean, that would be a necessity. I don't know if it's exactly going to be the same mistakes, but they're probably going to meet people that they are karmically connected to. Um, and they're going to have to resolve this some way, shape, or another. I mean, this is part of the path. I have these discussions with my mom, and she's telling me, "Oh, I don't want to come back and meet these certain people." I'm like, well, we have to deal with this at some point. And you know, I have found meditation to be a beautiful way to just kind of let go of much, and I just look at my own life and how I've been in relationships that have gone sour. I've had experiences that just left me with a bad feeling. I had a lot of anger, a lot of sadness, and I had to learn to let that go and to let go of things that are connecting me to things that I don't want to come back and have to repeat. So there are different ways people can let go of what they aren't facing now, but you still, I mean, you can't ignore it forever, right? Because it's just impossible to ignore it. You're meant to deal with it. We are meant to deal with all of the chaos that we are here looking at. And if we don't address it, then we're just going to have, I would say, probably have to repeat it all again.
Yeah, that's a scary one, isn't it? Oh my God. Um, you mentioned that there are some tips that even Steiner shares on how to do this ascension, how to not be stuck in whatever place we are and really become better and growing, improving. Can we share some of those tips from the most practical ones to the most spiritual ones?
Yeah, and his tips are very straightforward. They're not hard to understand. Um, these esoteric teachings are for all of humanity. They have been occulted by some groups, but now, in 2024, where we're making this video, all of this is available. It's just, can you find it? Coming across various things, and can you put it to use? So, one of the first things Steiner recommends is, just focusing and controlling the mind. Our mind is always, you've heard of mind chatter. People are always thinking. And I have a hard time doing this because I try to meditate twice daily, but my mind takes over a lot of times. I start thinking of my to-do list, or a memory comes up. So it's being able to just focus on one thing for a certain amount of time. Start with 5 minutes and just focusing on one object or one word. Make it not anything too emotional, like just focus on a pencil for 5 minutes and that's it. And then try to expand that. I've been practicing lately transcendental meditation, which is more of kind of an Ayurvedic, Hindu practice. And and it's been very calming. It's been something I look forward to. I do it twice a day, 20 minutes each time. And it's beautiful when I go into my room to meditate, the dogs are there. We're all meditating together. And you're just calming the mind. You focus on a mantra and you're just letting the mind kind of dissolve to the all that is. Because up here, they describe it as like an ocean, and the top of the ocean where the waves are, that's where all of the chaos of our reality is taking place. But there's a deeper presence. And in transcendental meditation, you can reach those deeper levels and become part of the all that is, and get a reminder of what we are a part of. We are a part of this creator that is, again, trying to view the world through smaller eyes, through one individual at a time. So meditation is really what Steiner begins with, focusing the mind. And then I think there's others like try to have like a new action every day, maybe something you wouldn't normally do, but a practice. A daily practice is very important. So whether that be that I'm going to do yoga asanas, certain asanas every single day, that's going to be your practice. Or maybe it's something else with, it's just totally different. Like you're going to walk by this one house every day and there's a little cat that lives there. You're going to feed that little cat every single day. But you have a daily practice that you respect, that you honor. And then another one of Steiner's recommendations is equanimity, trying to not let your emotions go way out of whack, trying to maintain a balance. So that means when you hear bad news that you're not going to be so depressed by it, or when you hear really happy news, you're not going to be over elated, but you're trying to maintain your emotions so that you're not controlled by them. You have something deeper within that is guiding you to stay on that middle path, coming back to the Kabbalah, right? And then another one of Steiner's recommendations is focusing on the positives, trying to see the beauty in all things, even the most horrific things. Can you find something beautiful and positive within that? And Steiner often recommends, or he doesn't recommend, but he talks about a story of Jesus where Jesus and his apostles were walking by a dead dog, and there were gnats floating around the dead dog, and many of the apostles looked away because they didn't want to see that. Jesus looked right at it, and he saw the dog's teeth, and he said, "Look at what beautiful teeth that dog has." Even though it's dead and it's rotting away, he focused on the positive. So these are things we can take to heart. And, it's easy to forget to do these practices. That's why it's a practice. You have to come back to it. And, you don't have to do all of them all at once. But I think starting with meditation and controlling the mind, when we look at the Hermetic laws, the first one is all is mental. And we have to focus on the mind. We have to control this mind of ours that can get us into trouble if we don't have control over it.
So true. As you were talking, I was just imagining also, physiologically speaking, obviously our mind is part of the more physical body, as well. It's like this connection between physical and spiritual. But again, going back to the fact that we're in a world that feels like it's attacking every side of us that should be elevating, what is the best, in your opinion, lifestyle and diet to follow to actually align with these practices so that they're more successful? Because in my mind, if I'm just imagining, people on our traditional Western diet, eating a lot of processed foods with a lot of excitement, like from caffeine and sugar, I mean, calming your mind is going to be a bit of an extra challenge. What do you think we should do when it comes to actually practical ways of eating better, for even practicing better meditation?
I've always been a huge fan of natural hygiene.
Yeah.
So, you look at the works of Herbert Shelton, T.C. Fry, even Joel Fuhrman, which I know has been a guest. He, when I did my internship with him, that's where I became aware of natural hygiene. And he was a natural hygienist. I think he's kind of slightly strayed a bit, but he's still those basic principles. A raw food, plant-based diet. It's you don't want anything enervating, nothing that's an excitant that can, create enervation in the body. I think that will help bring forth balance. And it's one of those things, if somebody's watching this video and they're like still on the standard American diet, keep in mind when you switch to a diet that is based on raw plant foods, there's going to be a lot of detox that is going to be taking you off a easy to meditate path. But I have found, the better I stick with raw fruits and vegetables, the easier it is for me to meditate. That practice, it goes hand in hand. If I, go out with friends or family for a night and let's say, we go, like one of my favorite types of foods are Indian food. Lovely food. It's so delicious, but they use so many spices that are very Even if you're eating a vegan dish, those spices can be a little invigorating and it's harder to meditate the next day, right? So I definitely feel like a raw plant-based diet and fruits are the most beautiful. Dr. Morse talks quite a bit about the fruit diet because it is the perfect food for humans. It is made up of structured water, so many nutrients. It has amino acids, monosaccharides, many of the essential nutrients that we need. And mix that with some, leafy vegetables, you're good to go.
I saw that you did a juice cleanse. How long
Yes.
was that for? I don't know if you're still on it now.
Well, I did it. I did it for like I think 20 days and then I had a slip up. And then I did another, I think 20 days. So I did 40 days
Wow.
overall, but in the middle I kind of messed up a little bit. And it was some emotional stuff coming up, that took me off my path. It was I noticed it first as a desire. I think I was missing the eating of food. And at that time, I was still feeding my dogs, cooked foods, and, I'd make food for them. My dogs are on a different diet now because they weren't thriving on the cooked grains at all.
Mm.
Um, so that's another story we can get into. But yeah, I was making a dish for my dogs, like quinoa and vegetables, and I was like looking at it thinking, man, I really could eat this. I just want to eat food. And I was thinking about it, and then that transit I didn't eat the food. But then I think the next day when I was juicing, um, I started eating some of the fruits that I was juicing, and then it kind of slipped from there. And then I had like maybe 5 days where I wasn't juicing. But then I was in a support group, Noah Lakshmi. I don't know if you know who she is, but
No.
she was running this juice cleanse. And it was nice to be a part of her group because I shared my experience and got right back on it. I think, she recommended, okay, let's take that as a learning experience. And if you want to continue, because we all have free will, I could have said, screw this, I'm not juicing anymore. But I just did, like a 36-hour water fast and reset my body, and I was back on the juice cleanse. So yeah, that was a good experience. So I think cleanses can be beautiful because you're releasing so much, but it's also going to bring up things, emotional that we have to address. So you detox in many levels,
Yeah.
emotionally, physically, spiritually.
I mean, you generally eat very healthy. So do you feel that your detox cleanse or, healing crisis was more emotional than physical?
It definitely was. Yeah. I think I still have a lot of emotional baggage to unload, and it's come out slowly. I'm thankful for. I've never had such an immense emotional release that it's been incapacitating, but it's trickled out, which I appreciate, so that I can still go to my job and work and teach and still do my daily practices, still walk my dogs every day. So it's been nothing too immense. But, I have been doing this for a long time. It started back when I was in medical school, doing a water fast with Joel Fuhrman. And then fast forward, I did like 6 months on fruit. And then I've done like the master cleanses with the lemon water and the cayenne pepper. I did a couple of those. So, and then this more recent juice cleanse. And that was like the longest juice cleanse I've ever done. Before that, I've done like maybe 10 days at a time, but nothing more than 10.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody this morning about his journey because I hadn't seen him in a while. And the first time I met this person, because he was a neighbor, he was a little bit overweight. He looked quite old and older, and he's our age. But he, I was like, "You're looking like you're regenerating." And I remember when he started cleansing, especially with the fruit, what he started having as a healing crisis is a very bad digestive system. Like he lost a lot of weight. He was too skinny. He wasn't absorbing anything. He couldn't keep down the food. He had running tummies. He had to really go through that very heavy healing crisis, and it didn't look very good. But 6 months later, his body started actually working properly, like still going on, eating a lot of fruit and doing the herbs by Dr. Morris and cleansing and supporting and eating a lot of raw and getting away from the animal products. And it's amazing, even his hair. So it was thinning. And although he will never have a full head again, but what he has looks much thicker, and his
Oh.
skin looks much better, and it really looks like he's regenerating. That was really impressive because he's not someone that is very deep into the lifestyle that we're in, but he did it. And I was very impressed by the results that I saw, which is like a statement of how powerful the food that we put into our body is, how powerful the herbs are, without any doubt. But also like the willingness to do it and be like, actually, I want to heal. Because for him, it would have been very easy to like, oh my God, this is, not making me healthy. I'm going to go to the doctor and take some drugs to stop all these symptoms. But he pushed through. It's like, okay, I have to fix my digestion the right way. So more fruit, more herbs, and try to really, really allow the body to heal again. But people get really scared with healing crisis. So, what is the best advice you can give? That maybe we can connect even to the teachings of Steiner when it comes to a healing crisis while you go through a cleanse.
Yeah, I don't know if Steiner ever talked about healing crises. He might have, but definitely it's trust. You have to trust the process because these healing crises can be scary. You're going to go through transitions of more pain, more discomfort. But once you get to the other side of that, there is a release. You see the breast tumor dissolve. You see, the inflammation go down. The pain goes away. It's always interesting to talk to clients, like some of my longer term clients. You've been asking them, you're like, do you remember where you were when we first started? They don't even recall all of the aches and pains that they came in with because those became, a long lost memory, which is good because now they can enjoy the body that they're in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of that is karma again. I mean, it's, if you ate a diet that is not appropriate for you as a human, and you did that for many years, and you put stress on your organs of elimination, you're holding on toxicity in your interstitial spaces. And once you start, letting go of that excessive load, your body is really what brings forth in its innate power the healing process. The foods are just lighter. So we're looking at more easier to digest foods that we digest quickly, we absorb easily, and can be used as energy or building blocks. That's really what the purpose of food is. And if we can't use food for those purposes, then it becomes anything else is toxic. So any of those chemicals on an ingredient label that you cannot pronounce, toxic. The animal products, the processed foods, it's all toxic stuff because we're not utilizing it correctly. And that stuff builds up within us. And then once we lighten the load and now we're eating foods that are easier to digest, the energy that we were using to try to deal with those inappropriate foods now is focusing on all of the things we've built up to dangerous levels. And the body finds a state where, okay, now I can get rid of this. Now I can clean house. But when we clean house, you go through the healing crisis event. If you stick with it and you stay with it to the other side, it really will pay off and you will see healing coming back. And I think, getting really skinny is really scary for some people because you might have come in overweight and you start losing weight. And you're like, oh, yeah, I look pretty good. And then you get really thin and people start making comments and, we're social creatures. So we start becoming, feeling bad about them telling us we look so thin. I mean, I went through that and it was not comfortable to have people tell me I didn't look good, even though I was feeling amazing, but we have to, again, coming back to the Kabbalah, you have to stay on that straight and middle path. That's really the only path to ascension. So don't listen to the naysayers that are saying, oh, you need to eat some meat because you're too skinny, or you need to eat some, real food. The real food is the food that was given to us by the creator and the plants, even in the Bible, let all fruit-bearing plants, or I can't remember the quote, but there's a saying in the first book of the Bible about what food is. And it's like the the trees that bear fruits and, the seeds. So basically fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. That's our food. And the fruit comes with living water. So,
That is very true.
mhm.
And I wonder, obviously, you teach in a very traditional institution. And I know last time we talked about just talking about anatomy. Sometimes it's challenging because obviously you have the perspective of a naturopath and you have to teach a curriculum which has been designed to fulfill the current medical system and the understanding of the body in that way so that we can, these students will go to medical school and, learn how to prescribe medication to work with symptoms rather than actually root causes. How do you implement, if at all, your spiritual knowledge into the teachings that you have with these students? Do they, I don't know if they find you offline or, I mean, online, off school to actually, do they ask questions about this? Do they come together with the physical, spiritual? Do they want to understand more? I know last time we talked about even them being more interested in the naturopathic approach, and I know some did, some didn't. But I wonder as time goes by and they probably might have gotten to know you online on YouTube a little bit more, if they are interested in this, and if you can consolidate these two, different sides so that they can get a perspective that is much broader than what we are teaching these guys, these students.
Well, unfortunately, the only place I feel I can do that is my teachings with Dr. Morris. So the school Dr. Morris has, the International School of the Healing Arts, I think the online courses that I've developed with him, and I think there are more forthcoming, that's where I've been able to kind of intertwine the spiritual with, the practical. Unfortunately, I will say, when it comes to academia, um, I I wish I didn't have to say this, but I think we're becoming more materialistic and it's becoming more profound. I would say maybe 20 years ago when I first started teaching, students were a little bit more curious about these things outside of the traditional teachings. And I would only offer that when asked. That's kind of one of those things, a principle I live by is that I try not to preach my beliefs onto anybody. We all have free will. And because students see me, kind of as an authoritative figure because I'm their professor, I don't want to say, oh, well, you guys should be eating just only plant foods. It's immoral to eat any animal foods and you should all meditate. I mean, I've mentioned things like that to students. Like I would love for us to start our class with a meditation because, students come in on test days with a lot of anxiety, but
Yeah.
I can't implement those things. But, unfortunately, I just stick with the physical and that's what they pay me to teach. So that's what I teach. And there's a lot to talk about when we just get into the physical. So it's not like I'm, not able to fill up the semester because oftentimes I run out of time. I love it when students do ask those questions, and it is rare that they do, but when they do, I will, with most love and respect I can offer, share with them what I feel to be something that might help them in their knowing. But I will always state that, this is not in the textbook, that you won't be tested on this, but, this is answering your question. But
Yeah.
those questions are becoming fewer and fewer as years go by. And it's quite sad. I've definitely seen a big shift since the pandemic. Students are not as curious, and many of them, they just want to know what's going to be on the test. They
Ah,
want to be, it seems to me that they want to just be this robot that can spit out answers without understanding. I know I had one student over the summer, and bless her heart, she tried really hard, but she was a B student. She really wanted an A. I could tell she wanted that A. And I asked her to come into my office and bring all of her notes with her. I want to see how she's studying. And she had everything written out, all of the review sheet questions. It was all written out. And I'm going over her answers. I'm like, well, do you understand this? And she's like, well, I have it written there. And I'm like, well, let's not look at this. I want you to answer this in your own words. And she could not do that.
yeah.
They just want to take
Parrot.
something from the textbook and memorize that, but not be able to paraphrase that. Because I tell students, if you're going into medicine, you're going to have a real person on the other side of you. And they don't want a textbook answer. They want a human answer. They want that compassion and that care to be associated with the knowledge that you've learned. And the care has been lost. We've lost the care in medicine. We're becoming just this machine. And this is something Steiner has warned of. The materialistic Ahrimanic, if you will. He calls it Ahriman, which is, the opposite of Lucifer. These are the two sides of the devil, if you will. Christ being the center path, Ahriman and Lucifer being the two that takes us off that center path. Ahriman is the materialistic side, is taking us into this becoming robots, becoming machines. Lucifer is like, the speaking in tongues, and you're so spiritual you cannot even contain yourself. And Lucifer, I wouldn't say is as evil as Ahriman. Ahriman is like the most evil. This is the inject everybody with a poison evil. That's Ahriman.
I guess we can go into imagining even why technocrats are thinking about bringing our consciousness into machines, right? Like, oh, live forever, but you're not going to live as a human or as a soul. It's just your brain or your consciousness is going to be into a machine. So that's you. And that's scary. That's so scary.
Very scary, yeah. Part of our natural way of living is going through the birth and death process.
Yeah.
That's what it means to be human. We have to go through this.
Yeah.
And it can seem scary because on the other side, we don't have any way of knowing, at least I don't have a firm way of knowing what's on the other side, but I can read spiritual teachings and have some kind of an idea. And there's a lot of near-death experiences people have shared what they've experienced. But we have to go through that. And I think as humans, we need to be very careful with who we trust, because there are people that seem good. They seem like, oh, they're doing great things for humanity, but then they throw in like, oh, your consciousness can be put into a machine and, let's just all be robots.
Yeah, for real.
Very scary, and it's crazy.
When it comes to your students, do you think that they don't ask these questions because they just don't know? And if that's the case, is it because social media is distracting them and we are moving away from, because there's a lot of this content even on social media. I guess algorithm, you need to want to follow certain things because all that pops up on my stuff is all about this. But I wonder, is it that they don't know even though so much information is available, or they don't care?
Well, first and foremost, it's funny. I've had my website, naturallawhealth.com, since when? 2019, I think, is when I went live with that website. None of my students have ever found me. They have never found me on social media. I don't put a lot of advertisement in. It's not like I'm trying to be found. Most people find me through Dr. Morse, because I've been on videos with him. I worked with him at his clinic, but I'm not trying to make myself known, like, okay, I want to get a lot of followers. So my students have never found me through that means. They are very distracted. Even though I tell them on the first day we meet, please don't have your cell phones out. I do allow laptops, but I tell them it's got to be associated with what we're talking about, because some students like to take notes on their laptop. But even though I tell them no cell phones, I will say in a given class of, let's say, 25 students, I'll have maybe 5 students that are obviously on their cell phone. And how can I tell? I'm standing in front of all of them. Students aren't just looking down smiling, because they have a puppy sitting on their lap. They're sitting smiling, looking at their phone.
Yeah.
And I tried to respect them as adults because they're in college. I know I've got coworkers that will take the phone away from them and put it in a box at the front. I just let them go. I'm like, that's their karma. If they start disrupting others, that's when I intervene.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to be their mother about this. And their lack of attention is just hurting themselves. they're paying for this class. I would hope that they are enjoying it.
Yeah.
I do encourage conversation and questions. Sometimes I get classes with a lot of questions. Other times I get classes that are very dry and students are just sitting there. I think there's a lot of intimidation. They don't want to look silly asking a dumb question.
Yeah.
And I always tell them there are no dumb questions. If you have a question, you paid to be in this class. If you don't know it, please ask.
Mm.
That's what you're here to do, is to learn, to broaden your perspectives.
Yeah. Curiosity is such a gift.
Yes, curiosity is at the heart of true knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. You wanna know. I actually even see adults that are like, this is what I know. I don't want to know more. Even doctors, like, come on. Like I don't know. I know that you learned a lot at school, and I know that you paid a lot of money to learn, but like, if you studied 20 years ago, I'm sure that you are aware that things evolve, even in medicine. Like, learn something new, dude. It's really incredible how people are so stagnant sometimes. It does reflect a lot in their life. I mean, when you see doctors that are not healthy looking, that they're not vibrant, like, how do you talk about health? And I know they don't really talk about health, they talk about disease management, but how can you talk about health if you're not even interested in being healthy? Like, it's just such a paradox, but especially when they are in front of I feel like if I go and see a doctor and I have the questions, but I also have some of the answers because I'm like learning, because I'm educated, I get the gaslighting going there. Like, they don't even want to engage in the conversation. And it's really scary. It's like you are really jeopardizing somebody's journey into health. Like, empower your patients. Like, I don't care because I'm going to still do what I want to do, but empower your patients. Don't make them feel like they're wrong. And if they don't follow you, they might die. That's crazy.
Yeah, there's so much fear
Yeah.
that they instill. I mean, I've had clients tell me, when they were diagnosed with the C word, that doctors and nurses from their office would call them like, okay, when are you coming in? We got to get you treated. You can't, if you don't treat this, you're going to die. It's like the fear. And I mean, talk about the kind of strength a person has to develop if you're going to go on this alternate path where you're going to try to let your body heal itself, which your body has the instructions on how to do much better than any other treatment out there. Your body is what heals yourself. When you get out of its way, it's like, okay, we're good to go. We don't have to deal with junk food anymore. We don't have to deal with toxic thoughts. We're going to focus on healing. And when you can rest, when you can truly rest, because when you go through a healing crisis, people are tired, animals are tired. That's why animals will fast for days at a time when they're sick, because that rest is so important. But yet in medicine, they always want to throw something at it. And what they're throwing at it is usually something the body doesn't recognize, and it's just a new toxin that's going to get lodged somewhere that we're going to have to excrete either immediately or down the road. So you're just adding more of a burden.
Totally. The perfect example we can give people is when somebody gets fever, instead of saying, okay, rest and let the fever run so that the fever can do what it does, which is killing pathogens, let it do its thing. No, kill the fever so that you can get up and go back to work. Like, the poor
and when
body.
you do that, you don't go back to work. I mean, it's funny, I remember like last year around this time, I was actually doing a 10-day juice cleanse and I developed a fever. It went up to 103, and it was like the first or second week of school, and I was like, oh, I have a fever. I haven't had a fever in a while. I was kind of excited because I'm like, oh, cool, I've got a fever. And I knew what to do. I mean, I was doing a juice cleanse, and fortunately, I had like usually several days of juice in my fridge. So over the next 3 days, because I wasn't as hungry, I finished up that juice, and then I just stopped because I didn't have any other food, and I let the body rest. And within 4 days, I was back to normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
I went from 103 to going back to work the following week. I did take a week off of work because my body needed that rest.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad I had that opportunity to take time off because I have sick days, fortunately, but I never usually get sick, but that's what the body needs. When you suppress the fever, what happens is that people are usually out of work for 2 weeks, maybe
Yeah.
more. Their healing is slowed down. You're not going to have the maximum healing when you interfere. You're interfering with what the body's already trying to do. All symptoms of illness are the body trying to get rid of toxicity.
Yeah, totally. Okay. Give me 3 things that people can do to connect better to their spiritual self, like to their soul, to understand themselves better. So 3 things that you think anyone that doesn't have any experience, totally ignorant about this, can start with.
I think the first is just developing a daily meditation practice, and start small, 5 minutes at a time. Put it in your calendar, in your phone. Make time for this and honor it as something so important, where you're going to just focus on nothing, or focus on a mantra, or focus on like one object. So you're controlling your mind and you're meditating and you're quieting the mind. So that would be the first thing I would mention, is meditation, a daily practice. Gosh, the other things beyond that, I often tell people is, find what you're interested in spiritual wise. So if you find Rudolf Steiner to be intriguing, start reading some of his books. Like I said, The Founding of a Spiritual Science, or The Founding of the Science of Spirit. I can't remember the title, even though I'm in the middle of reading this book. And I've listened to the whole audiobook. That's a great book to start with Rudolf Steiner, but there's so many other great spiritual teachers. In the world of transcendental meditation, there's Dr. Tony Nader. He's a great spiritual teacher in Ayurveda. Other, types of spiritual paths have their own kind of leaders that have developed a lot of knowledge that you can listen to. So I'm not even naming them all. But I would say, focus on those works and look at the esoteric versions of those work, like esoteric Christianity or the Kabbalah, or esoteric, Ayurvedic is more of the esoteric Hindu version of religion. So follow these paths because there are just gold nuggets of truth that, once you start down that path, it goes so much deeper. When we look at the path that Steiner takes us on, he gets even into the Rosicrucian type of path of initiation. And that will take you a long way. I mean, a lifetime to take all of that in. So find something that you're interested in. I know that where I've learned a lot of my spiritual teachings is at the Vesica Institute, vesica.org. And Dr. Robert Gilbert has taught me a lot of spiritual teachings. He focuses on Steiner and his path. So that would be number 2. And then I think number 3 would be just to respect the physical in the way of lightening your load, because a spiritual path is much easier when you're more holistically, honoring your body. Because if your body has to deal with a lot of complex foods, complex digestion, that's going to take you off of a meditation. That's going to take you off of, you're going to develop pain. And when you have pain, it's harder to meditate. When you're sore, it's harder to meditate. It's harder to do yoga when you're not feeling good. So really honor the body, and just nourish your body with foods that you were meant to most easily eat, see, that are ripened, and digest and absorb.
Yeah, thank you. And I know that you don't have the anatomy and physiology courses anymore from your site, but they are only on Dr. Morse's. But where can people find you and how they can work with you?
So I do consultations still. So naturallawhealth.com is my website where people can find a little bit more about, booking a consultation with me. I do have the free version of my website, and that's found on my website, naturallawhealth.com. But I don't have all of the courses there. So if they just want to preview and they don't want to purchase what is through Dr. Morse's school, they can get that there. at a reduced cost, because I know some people financially can't afford what courses Dr. Morse offers. But I would recommend, if you want all of the courses Dr. Morse and I have done, plus all of the other amazing things Dr. Morse has offered, iridology and detoxification specialist lectures, I would go to the International School of the Healing Arts. I just didn't want to kind of compete with that too much, so that's kind of why I went down to the free version. I can't even access it anymore, but it's still there as an offering for people if they'd like to look at that. But my website has that, and International School of the Healing Arts is where Dr. Morse's classes are.
Brilliant. And what about your Friday lives? How can people join? And also, where can they send you the questions?
Yeah, they can email me, Patty Lager ND, as a naturopathic doctor, Patty Lager ND at gmail.com if they ever want to email questions. The last couple of weeks, I have taken off from my live stream. I thought I was going to travel to Florida. That didn't happen. And then this last Friday, I just had things to prepare for because I'm starting school next week. So I had a lot of things to catch up on. But I'll be back next Friday for my live stream. But yeah, I'm on YouTube and Twitch, and I also live stream through the One Great Work Network, which is a collaborative work put together by Mark Passio. So I'm a content creator there, and the live stream goes live there as well. So that's every Friday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. And so, yeah, you can just join live and ask questions, or you can email them to me, or if nobody joins, I just usually pick a spiritual topic and talk about it until people show up.
Nice. Thank you so much, Patty. Your work is very important. And I know that balancing a more mainstream approach with the knowledge that you have sometimes is challenging, but you're doing a great job. I know you've been through a lot of heartache with the animals. I can empathize with all of it. But thank you for always showing up. Thank you for taking the time, also honoring your healing so that you can show up with that experience and share it with people, because I think we need to always inspire people and tell them that it's okay not to feel great, but then you can get back in course, because there's too much pressure to always be perfect, and we're never going to be. So I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you so much. And thank you for everything that you are offering and all of the great conversations that you're sharing with the world, because we don't know about many of these people until someone like yourself is saying, hey, look who I'm interviewing you. And you've got a wealth of knowledge just on your own. So
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patty. See you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Patty, for being on the show, and thanks everyone for listening in. I really hope that you're going to check out Dr. Lager's work and website. And please, if you are in the US, do log in on Friday nights for a live Q&A. It's brilliant. I love her. She's just such a sweetheart and so pure, really, of art. She loves animals. She loves her work. She loves humans. She's really a stellar human being. I absolutely love her. So please do support her, follow her, and try to be involved with the questions. Like, the more we ask, the more we can talk about subjects like spirituality and health and well-being and truth, the better we will be. So I hope that you enjoy it. As always, you can give feedback on all the platforms that you're listening on, whether it's Spotify or Apple and YouTube, and make sure that you subscribe and follow. Support the channels, because the more we grow, the more we can enjoy inviting amazing guests. All right, guys, I'll see you next week. Bye.